done all those interviews and collected all that data from other designers, is there other insight and wisdom that you can give us?
Well, I boiled the tips down to 10, and I was thinking it sort of breaks down into the 2 Ps: paperwork and personality.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
The hallmark of being a good assistant is what I was thinking. Yeah, but my first one was personality, be likable. But that's something, you know, I kind of hate starting with that one, even though that's the number one thing people say. Likable, good sense of humor. Because I think people feel insecure, or they feel not threatened, but like worried that they're not that person or whatever. And, you know, chances are you don't need to worry about that. Like, we're not saying you have to be like a comedian, you know, just like be pleasant to be around. Like Tim said, 16 hours a day, eating all the meals together, living out of town together, like, you know, going on excursions together if you're out of town sometimes. You know, that's a lot of time with people. So it just means you need to, like, you know, be friendly, mostly positive, sort of generous of spirit, you know, like, don't worry that you weren't, you know, the prom king in high school. Like, that's not that kind of likable. Like, you just need to be...
That sounds obnoxious.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that either. Maybe.
No, but read the New York Times. Have an opinion about the world, you know, or like read, listen to Fox News, but just have an opinion, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's a big one that people mention. And one of my other ones you just said was I put work on the art of conversation, which I'm actually really terrible at. I'm, you know, like I said, I'm kind of shy. I am talkative when I need to be, like right now, but like, I am, you know, generally I'm sort of quiet, sort of shy. So, but you can work on the art of conversation just like anything else. You know, pay attention to things outside of theater. Like Tim said, read the news or watch the news, read the news, whatever. Be a citizen of the world, like, you know, learn about the social acts that are going on right now, and you know, be willing to discuss them in a sort of respectful way, you know, all that sort of stuff. Like learn about art and music, like anything outside of theater. Like, people really value that because it's something that makes dinner interesting. It distracts your designer from stressing about the show. I've even learned about sports.
Oh my god.
Which is not something I know about. But when I worked for Brian McDevitt, he loves baseball. That's like his big thing. And at dinner breaks, he used to have an office in Midtown, and we would go to his office in Midtown and watch like the baseball season, especially when it was like, oh my God, I'm going to get this wrong, the Red Sox versus the Yankees, I think was like a huge deal. So I learned that it was a huge deal, right? And I would literally watch the news every morning, like for the sports segment, so that I could see what went on that night with baseball. And then I could say to him the next day, man, did you see that pop fly on the blah, blah, blah? Like, I didn't know what I was talking about. But he loved it. You know, he would be like, oh man, I can't believe that play. You know, he'd be way into it. So it was just a way of me trying to reach out to him and relate to him and, you know, distract him from his stressful day. And so sports are not something that I'm into, but it just helped that relationship. So that's an example of, you know, working on your art of conversation.
Yeah, sure.
I'd also say positivity. Like, that's a good one. Positivity is key. Like, don't let your designer go to the dark place. You know, and it doesn't mean like you're being, you're not acknowledging that things are tough or anything, but like, you know, always be willing to bring solutions, or just sometimes you just need to be an ear, you know, and just let them vent or let them talk. And you just have to say, yeah, man, that's really tough. Let's look at that later. Or, you know, whatever it is, like, you know, stay upbeat, keep things light, pun intended, right?
Yeah.
Just sort of be that person that's like a relief for them, you know, like you're not like, oh man, what are we going to do about that sequence? Like, that's not a good way to handle things. Be like, all right, so that was interesting. Why don't we, you know, look at it again later, or try A, B, and C, or have you thought about the fan out that, you know, haven't used yet? Or, you know, like, that kind of thing might not be appropriate conversation in the moment, but over dinner, that might be something that they need to sort of work through, you know, and just being upbeat about things and positive about things is going to help them. And you will get hired again and again if you can be that person that feels like a rock for them and feels like you're going to help them through things and has good ideas, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
What were my other personalities? Oh, be flexible. That's another one I had. You know, be willing to go with the flow, like especially on new musicals. Like anyone who's worked on a new musical, like they'll like take this scene and this song from Act 1 and they'll put it in Act 2 and expect you to do it that night, you know? So, you know, that's, I'm not going to say it's easy for anybody, but like for a lighting console, that's difficult. Like, yeah, you can copy the cues, but then like the moving lights go all over the place. And, you know, there's a lot that can go wrong with cutting and pasting huge segments of cues. And then, you know, the next day, sure enough, they're going to go back to what they had. So even though you like fixed everything, they have to go back. So you as the assistant or associate really need to track like where all this stuff ended up, what day you changed what, because sometimes it's not the next day, sometimes it's the next week, and they're like, oh, remember what we did last Tuesday? We're gonna do that again, you know, and you've like fixed the whole trickle down effect through the whole show since then. And so it can feel frustrating, but don't let it frustrate you, you know. That's easier said than done, but just breathe, right, and just like get through it.
I think one thing I said at the beginning of the week was like as soon as you get it in your head that your job is just to solve problems, and theater is one big problem, and every day there is going to be a problem, and it always is a problem, like, and that is your job to solve those problems. Then some of the problems are exciting, and it goes back to your point about being positive as well. But like, just walk through that stage door knowing that all these things are problems and they all need solved.
Yeah.
And that's why you're there, and that's why you're getting paid. And that's actually what's kind of the fun part about the job is like, all right, well, that's a train wreck. How are we going to unpick that and make it work?
Yeah, and the more like bouncy you can be about that, like, all right, let's do it, you know, without making your designer feel like you're disrespecting them. Like, you know, all right, let's move on. Okay, let's figure that out. You know, like just keeping things light. Like that's, you know, it's sometimes hard when you're exhausted and it's, you know, week, I mean, 27 of tech, depending on which show you're working on. Like I'm thinking of Spider-Man, right? You know, that's your job. They hire you to be that person. Yeah. So always have like a plan B and C in your head. You know, even if it's simple things like, I don't know, like a piece of scenery isn't able to come in and you had all these focus notes on it. Like, all right, well, don't just stop and do nothing. Like, think of what you can do. What's plan B? Let's cue some stuff. Let's focus these other lights, whatever it is, you know, just be able to pivot, you know, like don't be so rigid that you can't pivot. That's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And number 5 for personality, I would say another big one people always talk about is knowing when to stay silent. This is a big one. Like some assistants come in and they're younger and they talk all the time, or they feel like they have to talk all the time, or they feel like they need to answer questions or solve things all the time. And it's like, actually let your designer do their work. You know, like you need to do all that stuff in the background, but don't constantly be bugging your designer. I hate using the word bugging because your designers, you know, are respectful of you as well, but like you can disrupt their process if you're talking too much to them.
Don't make it about you.
What's that?
Don't make it about you. Like what's going on is not about you.
Just work. You are a cog in a machine, you know. You're a very important cog, and you know there's no doubt about that. But you are part of the machine. What were you going to say, Jim?
I was just going to say, like, don't expect positive reinforcement. Like,
yes,
it's not that. That is not the environment. Everyone is there doing a job. No one is getting positive reinforcement. We're just all working as hard as they can. Yeah, I mean, sure, as the designer, every now and then you'll get a director that says, oh my God, that looks amazing, right? But most of the time, the designer is just doing their work. And if the director says that looks amazing about one cue, like they've won, right?
But it's like they're not expecting the director to turn around with every cue and say, good job. You know, in the same way, like you format your paperwork and it looks great. Like you don't expect the designer to be like, great work. You know, if you get that, awesome. But you don't always get that. I've had this guilt where I talk too much, or that's the wrong way of saying that. I asked a question at the wrong time. And I've carried around the guilt, like my designer got upset with me. I carried around the guilt of like, did he not win the Tony because I interrupted his brilliance? You know, like, I know that's a little far, but some designers really get in the zone and you don't want to like disrupt that because they get upset. So that was where I learned that lesson.
Good lesson to pass on then.
Yeah. All right. So paperwork. So that was personality. We're doing okay on time, I think.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Oh, great. Paperwork. So that was personality. So the 2 P's, the second one is paperwork. I would say, just trying to boil down this book, I was like, all right, what are like the key points that go over all of the paperwork, right? And I would say number 1 is double check everything. You know, like originally I was going to say strive towards perfection, but you know, perfection's not really possible, right? But you can try really hard. Yeah. But, you know, like proofread everything. Like that matters, you know, even emails to your designer, to the team, like don't just send it off without a greeting, without a signature, like, you know, misspellings, like all that stuff is sloppy and it only looks bad on you, you know? Oh gosh, especially when you're applying to work for somebody, you're sending them a cover letter and resume. If there's a typo in a cover letter or resume, like I already know that you're not meticulous, you know? So you're being hired to be meticulous in a job, like show that you are, you know, make sure that there's no mistakes. And this even extends into like social media. Like people don't think about proofreading social media, but you need to make a choice. Like, do you have just a private social media, or do you have a social media that you have invited like designers to be friends, other associates to be friends, right? If you've done that, you are now in a public arena and you now need to consider what you put on social media.
It's now LinkedIn anymore. It's not your Facebook.
Right.
Right? Like, yes, they're all your friends, but they also employ you. So stop posting naked pictures of yourself.
Oh my God. If you do that, no. But, you know, I've had students not understand that, where they, you know, they post some personal thing. It doesn't even have to be that personal. It can be like, here's a bikini picture of how much weight I lost this week. Like, no one needs to see that who's working with you, you know? So like, don't do it. Like you either make the choice to have personal or not. And, you know, that's a big choice, because the not part of that, you got to still consider how you're viewed through the eyes of who all your friends are. And you might have, you know, hundreds of friends, thousands of friends. So consider who that is. So that even goes into the double checking proofreading thing.
That's great advice.
Yeah. It's exhausting, right? But it's how it is. Number 2, I thought of was consistency. The easiest way to make a light plot look professional, for example, and I know you've talked about that in this class, is my rules are line weights, font styles, and font sizes. Like if you make choices and create a standard or use somebody's standard, that's the easiest way to produce beautiful paperwork. So don't just like willy-nilly, like a bunch of sizes of fonts, a bunch of different fonts because they look fun. Like you don't care about line weights. Like that's the mark of a non-professional or someone who's not trained, right? Yeah. So line weights, maybe I think I use 4 or 5 different ones. And very specifically, fonts, I use 2, maybe 3 different sizes and only 1 font, right? Except for the title block, which has the logo in it. I mean, the title block is still my font, but the logo is its own thing. So yeah, so that's so easy. I tell my students that right away. I'm like, all right, you know, you're now in grad school. I will teach you this one thing today, and we can graduate you tomorrow because you're going to look like a professional instantly. You know, it's like so easy. But nobody gets that or knows that, you know. So until somebody tells you, like, consistency is the key, Some people even use the same, most people use the same font through all of their paperwork. So it looks like one lighting package, which looks very professional,
Yeah. Branding,
yeah. Which, wasn't a word when I was doing this or starting out, but now it is. So you have to think about kind of your brand and how you present yourself. Sort of going along with that, my next one was templates. Using a template promotes efficiency and speed. So what you should work on if you don't have them already is a starting template for your draftings and a starting layout for your light write and things like that. Like at San Diego State, I have an entire class dedicated just to making your own templates so that when you go out in the world, you got them made, because I made them while I was working at Billington's, so I had the bonus of like having that training there, which I always call my postgraduate training at Billington U, because he says he went to Musser U. So it's like, I was lucky enough to have that in the professional realm, but it's even better if when you're a student or starting out or a young professional, like if you can create your templates, it just makes you make more money, right? Like if you're getting paid $2,000, and you spend $1,000 of time of that drafting, like if you have a template that cuts that down to 500, you're now making more money. Like think about it kind of as time is money.
Sure. Great advice.
Now I'm talking like an American, right?
No, but I mean, especially we earn less over here, so that's even better advice.
Right? It's true.
Yeah.
So it's like you have a starting out point, and all a template is it's just a blank document with all of your preferences set, like if it's a drafting, like your fonts, your line weights, your classes, your layers, like all that stuff is all set. Your title block's ready to go. Like light write, I have a layout. Like any other paperwork I have, it's either, if you're using a program like Spot Track from Rob Halliday, like that's already created for you, that template, right? So that's beautiful. And all you need to do is fill in the stuff, the information. So that's kind of the idea of templates, but it makes you faster, more efficient, and essentially earns you more money. So that's something that's really important. And if you're working for a designer, like you're being an associate working for a designer, make sure you use their preferences and their templates. I have another story of another designer that got upset with me when I was my first off-Broadway show. I was assisting this major designer, and I thought I was being so efficient by alphabetizing his positions in light write. Because I thought, well, this shouldn't I alphabetize this? Like that. Like I thought I was doing the right thing. I was so not doing the right thing. Like, he had actually already set it up the way he liked it. And then when he was on stage focusing, he preferred to use the instrument schedule. All the booms were like all over the place. Like everything was all over the place. And he was very upset and yelled at me from the stage. And I was very embarrassed, and later he apologized because I was young and, new. But it's things like that. Like if you think you're being like clever about something, which I thought I was, clever's the wrong word. Like I thought I was like doing the right thing. Like check
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't like getting yelled at. That's for sure.
I don't. And it does happen time to time. But, just because I've used a couple of examples of being yelled at doesn't mean you get yelled at all the time. So don't worry. My next paperwork thought is actually creativity. Don't think of shows as cookie cutters because they're not. Consider the paperwork needs of each show to see if unique solutions are needed. For example, is there enough room on the plot to include the booms on the plot, instead of a separate boom plate? Things like that's, are efficient. If it's still neat and organized and easily read, maybe that's an answer. Like, if you just have one chandelier, which no Broadway or West End show has just one chandelier, but say you just have one chandelier, like, can that fit on the light plot? You probably don't need a whole other, like, practicals page or deck-elect or anything like that. Like, it's one chandelier. So thinking about efficiency in terms of paperwork, like you might not need all 5 plates of your drafting or whatever. And I know we're talking West End shows, it's just one document. So that's pretty. Not all
West End shows.
If I think about it, that's efficient.
Yeah, it's efficient,
but not always easily read. So it's this balance between organized and efficiency. But not every show's a cookie cutter. Things like I just received the Hamilton paperwork to look at. And it has a new piece of paperwork called the template orientation, which I've seen Ryan O'Gara do for other shows as well. Because Howl is very specific on how the gobos are placed in the fixtures.
His internal reflections gobo is always lands on the deck at the exact same position, isn't it?
Yeah, and like Hamilton has the construction, so it's very specific how it actually they oriented so it sits on the turntable, so that's very specific how it lives in the fixtures. So that's not a type of paperwork that's normal, like out there, like something you always do. But it was a need that needed fulfilling for that show that was recognized by the associate, and so it was created.
And it would have saved lots. I mean, I can give you an example of doing a big Hal Binkley show in Germany where they had that template document that showed where both types of templates should be oriented in source 4, but no one read it or saw it. And when I turned up to focus the show, of course, probably all in all, like it was an extra hour on our focus, the extra 3 minutes per fixture it took to reorient the gobo the right way. So that shit's important.
Easy. I know. I'm surprised that was an hour. Like, just thinking about they got to pull it out. It's too hot. So they have to make sure they have gloves and they have to turn it. And then sometimes it's not cut right. Like that's a nightmare.
We ended up having a whole focus team just working ahead of us just to get the gobos oriented right so we could focus faster.
Oh my goodness. That is a perfect example, Tim, of like a piece of paperwork, like a need that needed fulfilling and a piece of paperwork that happened.
Or all the details on like Ken's light plots or most people's plots where it shows like on a par can which way the barrel should be rotated. Like that's easier to do on the deck than it is in the air. So that's saves when you've got your lights focused and extra per light, that's 300 extra minutes,
I know. That's exactly how I think about it. It's all about time. Like, and I try to teach my students that because when you're in school, it feels like you have all the time in the world. It feels like you have all the free labor in the world, and we shouldn't think of it that way. We should think about very specifically time and labor costs, and even if that's in terms of time, like for every extra hour they're hanging lights, they're not doing their homework, which means they're not doing as well in classes. Like that matters, so I will always say to them, how many lights do you have? Okay. The way you estimate the general, at least the Broadway rule you estimate is a minute a light is what it should take to focus. But if there are many, like for a professional focuser, but if there are many like hard to reach positions, then multiply it by 3 minutes a light. Yeah. So if you've got 300 lights, not counting the moving lights, times whatever, like that's how many hours you have. And often that's more hours than you actually get for focus. So you have to think about that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the longer it takes to focus, the less time you have to write cues on your 600 cue show,
Which raises the stress level of your designer, which makes your life a little less happy. There's every action has a consequence and you have to think about what that is. So being creative about your paperwork, if it solves a problem, like will make your life that much easier. So, if the designer's upset with you and things are going long and you end up being there late, if it's not a union show, then you're spending less time at home with your partner and your cats or whatever, there's all these things that add up. So thinking about it that way is really important. And my last one, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, I just said that's great.
The audio kind of cuts each other off.
Yeah, there's a delay. It's super annoying.
My last one was, you sort of touched on it, was just most importantly, have fun. This is sort of a paperwork / personality thing. If we're in this industry and we're not having fun, like what's the point, right? Like none of us get paid as much as we should, even like union, you just don't get paid enough because there's just so much work to do. So I always try to make games out of what I have to do because I think that's more fun and like a great attitude to have. For example, like trying to finish all your paperwork notes before you go home at night so that you can come in later the next morning. Right. Again, like actions, consequences. Like I would rather get up at, 8 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. So let's figure that out. Let's get all our paperwork notes done, right? So that sounds fun because then I get a reward.
Yeah. You know, put yourself a big breakfast at the hotel buffet or something like
that. Yeah, which you miss if you get up too early, right? Focus. I love thinking of focus, like conventional focus, kind of like a video game. Like, you know how you have to, like, say you're playing like an old school video game. Like, I'm a huge Mario fan because that's how old I am. But Mario, you have to, like, you know, hit certain things at a certain rate of speed, you know, to complete that level to get to the next level. Like
hit certain goalposts, right?
Yes. So, yeah. Again, we're a nerd, right? Like, that's a nerdy way to think about it. But I love that. I think about, like, I have to hit a certain speed in the focus in order to get these things done, to go to the next electric, which is like the next level or whatever it is, you know, something that makes it kind of fun.
That's great advice. Yeah, you're totally right. No one's making enough money to not have fun doing this. Of course, it'll be stressful, but
yeah, of course.
You don't have to remember that we love it.
Yeah.
Or if not, you can go work in film and TV and make a lot of money to be stressed out.
And not have fun, believe me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine, but it's not fun like theater. And then my last tip for the fun is once you get to know your designer, wait till you know your designer. But like fun things at the tech table can be fun. Like Ed McCarthy always has this M&M dispenser where it's like a slot machine, you know, you like pull the arm and the M&Ms come out. Like, you know, that's kind of fun. Who sent me, shoot, I forget. Somebody just sent me a tech table drawing that had a blender on it. And he said, like, God, I think it was Tyler Mikulaw's team, maybe Jimmy Lawler. I can't remember. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But like, there's a blender, and he said to me, like, we actually used the blender. We made like tableside guacamole.
Hopefully not in a quiet moment of a run through or something.
God, I'm sure that was at a meal, but like, you know, that's super fun. Or like, you know, it's the holidays and you put tinsel on the monitors or whatever. Like, you know, Gil Hemsley was known for bringing fresh flowers, and he had a toy train that went around the tech table. And I have a picture from Rob Halliday that has a mirror ball at the tech table. Like, and then like Hugh Vanstone is known for like having fun things on his light plot, right? Like, you know,
yes.
I just like his light plot. There's like a picture of the Queen, you know. Hal Bickley always has a dog on his magic sheets. Like,
I think it's his dog, isn't it?
I think so. I actually don't know the full story, but there's always this dog. You know, it's a stress relief for him, I'm sure. You know, I would love to picture my cats on my magic sheet. Like, I'm going to start that, right? So it's okay.
Talking point.
Yeah,
Talking
right.
point. Stress relief in the theater, it's all good. Right. Billington used to always have, we'd always have a bowl of candy at the corner of the table, try to draw people in so they come over and chat to us and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's true. He loves that because then he gets to know the cast better. You know, the director comes over and will like eat chocolate and stress less. You know, like there's all sorts of things you do. So we drive home professional, but like there are times when you're comfortable with people to have some fun. So when you get to that stage, like, embrace it, because you know that's why we're in this business. It's the business of people, and we love being around people. So like, have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so well put. I love your 2 Ps, Anne. They're so brilliant. I hope they're in your next book.
Well, you helped me think of that the other day, so maybe it will be.
I'm a royalty on that, please.